Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Buddhacharya Astotra Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Viṣṇupād Paramahansa Buddhacharya Astotra Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Okay. Before we begin, did I read all the other things that are happening today? I just mentioned the Sharat. I did read it. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Forgive me for the delay. On this 7th day of November, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I'm sorry, I'm spacing out. Om Namo, I did? Yes. Okay, sorry. And we are reading Canto 6, Chapter 1, text number 65, and I am going to read to the end of the chapter. Okay. Vipram Sobhayam Apraudham Kule Mahati Lambitam Visarja Jachirat Papaha Svaidinyapanga Vidha Dihi Viprang Sabharyam Apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Viprang sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Viprang sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Viprang sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Viprang sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Viprang sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Manodama Vipram sabharyam apraudham Kule mahati lambitam No. Visasarja chirat papa Svaidinyapanga vidnadi Vipram, the daughter of a Brahman. Sabharyam, his wife. Apraudham, not very old, youthful. Kule, from a family. Mahati, very respectable. Lambitam, married. Visasarja, he gave up. Achirat, very soon. Papaha, being sinful. Svaidinya, of the prostitute. Apanga vidnadi, his intelligence pierced by the lustful glance. Because his intelligence was pierced by the lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahman, Ajamila, engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahman family. Purport. Customarily, everyone is eligible to inherit his father's property, and Ajamila also inherited the money of his father. But what did he do with the money? Instead of engaging the money in the service of Krishna, he engaged it in the service of a prostitute. Therefore, he was condemned and was punishable by Yamarāja. How did this happen? He was victimized by the dangerous, lustful glance of a prostitute. All right, I'm just going to be in English here. Although born of a Brahmin family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. So she had a whole bunch of children originally. Text 67. The Brahmin irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scriptures, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore he is full of sins. So this is, of course, the Yamarāja winding up their argument why they shouldn't be able to take him. He is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. Purport. Food prepared by an unclean, sinful man or a woman, especially a prostitute, is extremely infectious. Ajamila ate such food, and therefore he was subject to be punished by Yamarāja. This man Ajamila did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamarāja for punishment. Therefore, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. Purport. The Visnudutas had forbidden the Yamadutas to take Ajamila to Yamarāja, and therefore the Yamadutas explained that taking such a man to Yamarāja was appropriate. Since Ajamila had not undergone atonement for his sinful acts, he was to be taken to Yamarāja to be purified. When a man commits murder, he becomes sinful, and therefore he also must be killed. Otherwise, after death, he must suffer many sinful reactions. Similarly, punishment by Yamarāja is a process of purification for the most abominable sinful persons. Therefore, the Yamadutas requested the Viṣṇudūtas not to obstruct their taking Ajamila to Yamarāja. Thus end the Bhakti purports of the 6th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The History of the Life of Ajamila. Om Jnana Timarandrasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Milatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So the Yamadutas have concluded their argument. It's something like in a court of law here, you know, in the prosecution and the defense of the Viṣṇudūtas, so you know who's going to win. And by all material calculation, they're absolutely correct. They went through a very technical description of how the living entity is composed. He has his senses and the subtle body and the mind, and material life is like a dream, and that by the modes of nature. They're saying anyone in this world who's a karmi, that word is in who's a fruitive actor, is punishable, because simply living in the world, in this dream world, you come under the sway of the modes of nature, and even unknowingly you perform sinful activities, and sometimes knowingly. And therefore, to the exact degree of how serious the infraction is, you should be judged and punished. And that's what we heard in the last chapter, the 5th canto. There are various descriptions of sinful activities, mostly very horrific, because after all, it's describing hell, and various hells that sometimes are just custom-made. In illicit sex, okay, you have to embrace the molten iron form of the opposite sex for, I don't know, 1 million years, you know. So that's why, after reading that chapter, I had this is a long time ago, how sense gratification is by nature fleeting and limited and frustrating, and it even brings misery even in this life. But you can engage in these normal, quote, normal sense gratifications in the Kali Yuga, and you'll get some fleeting pleasure, there's no question. But it's like a drop of water in an ocean compared to the suffering you're going to have. Illicit sex and intoxication. And I like to give the example because I grew up near New York, you know. And we would go into the city sometimes, and we'd go to a restaurant and this and that. And I remember distinctly seeing in the, I was when I was a kid, you know, and I see there's a little fish tank in the window, and there's a lobster. Thank you. And I asked my mother, "What's this all about?" "Oh, well, this is to show, you know, how fresh it is, you know, because they take the live lobster and they put it into the water." And even then, as just a sensitive kid, I said, "Really?" You know, I never in my life tasted lobster. I just couldn't conceive of it. But there's a specific hell for that, and you can imagine what it is. You get boiled. You get boiled for like 1 million years, you know, for eating lobster. So the idea is that it's meant to, you know, that's a just punishment for all the suffering you cause. So the naturally kind-hearted, merciful Vaishnava that Purification was, one of his first comments here in the beginning of the chapter, how can living entities be free from this suffering? And Shukadev Goswami begins to test his disciple there. And he says, well, they have to atone. It's interesting, you know what atone? We're atone at one. At one. You become at one with God if you atone for your sins. That's where the word atone comes from. And so he described the various atonements, but even Shukadev at first said just the regular atonement really can't do the trick. And then he said the cultivation of knowledge. And that's where that tapasa brahmacharyena verse comes in. That verse, although Prabhupada would quote it, say, well, this is characteristic of what devotees should go through, tapasa brahmacharyena yamena niyamanava. And the niyamena that he translates in the translation here, I think he mentioned in the purport, he says japa, the word is japa in the commentaries, I looked it up, is that one of the elements of niyama, is that, pious things that you do, yama niyama, like that. And it's chanting the holy name, because the translation, the commentary talks about japa. But I was thinking, that kind of is a little not in the plot here, because chanting the holy name, even indifferently or not purely, is giving so much result. So the commentators, I'm not saying we're going to change this, but japa there's so many other things you could chant in japa. You can mutter various mantras and chant and this and that, and there's material side to that also. Anyway, after that, Purification doubts that can work. The famous verse about the elephant bathing, right? Kundra Shochava. Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. Now maybe I won't forget so many shlokas. So after that we get the actual verse that is one of the ones that's most quotable in this chapter. Kechit kevalaya bhakta vasudeva padayana agam dunvanti kartsnyena nihadam iva bhaskara. That it's rare, very rare, to find a pure devotee. Kevalaya bhakta, kevalaya in this case means pure devotee. Vasudeva parayana. This word parayana is very nice. It means completely dedicated. And I love that because I'm a little like poetic sense. Narayana, parayana. This phrase comes up in the Bhagavatam. It means fully dedicated, 100%. Agam dunvanti kartsnyena. This word kartsnyena, which is so difficult to pronounce, that's the sin becomes immediately is fully destroyed. Nirharam iva bhaskara, just as the sun completely dissipates. Nirharam iva bhaskara. Yeah, as the sun dissipates the fog. So that verse is often quoted. And it's very hopeful. I mean, before we get to the whole point of how powerful the holy name is, just becoming a devotee, which of course involves chanting the holy name, so many eons of sinful reaction are eradicated. Which, we're living the life, and most people in this age, they don't even believe in reincarnation. It is what it is, grab all the gusto you can get, because isn't there a t-shirt? YOLO? No, YOLO, you only live once. Meaning, let's go for it, right? Don't delay, get as much. No, that's deep ignorance. So, the standard is given then. But then we get the further explanation, the story about how powerful the chanting of the holy name is. Ajamila eventually became a completely pure devotee, but he had fallen from, and it's very nicely described. He was very Brahminical, and he was doing his Brahminical duties, and he was chanting the japa, and everything. But he wasn't really bhakti. He wasn't wholly and solely dedicated to bhakti. There's so many other things involved with Brahmins, that you can get involved in. That at least externally, they don't have anything to do with pure devotion. So in any case, he wasn't protected. When he went out to the forest to perform his Brahminical duties, he'd done it many times before, getting firewood. Now, it's gathering firewood is the theme, is a little sub-theme. You remember with Krishna with Sudama? There's a whole pastime that they went out during the Gurukul, performing their menial duties, which is one is bane is to get firewood for the sacrifices. But Krishna arranged, there'd be a big downpour. They became stuck there all night, And the Guru came later, Sandipani Muni, and he came with all of they were looking for them where they didn't come back. And so it was a wonderful pastime there, intimate pastime with Sudama and Krishna. So. And also, how to approach the guru. This is carrying firewood is also there. Samatpani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam, describing the guru. What is it? Tasmad Gurum Papadyeja Jigyashu Shreya Uttamam Kaschid. What is it? Samatpani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam Tadvigyanatam Sagurum Mavagached. Samatpani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam. That's the other one. Yeah. So these verses are so important. Tad vigyanartam. If you want to get vigyan, if you want to get an actual experience of the absolute truth, the artam is your goal. Tad vigyanartam sogurum eva abhigached. I just heard Prabhupada chant it on the tape this morning. Tad sogurum eva abhigached samitpani shotriyam bhavanuste. It said you have to approach the guru, and the word abhigached is imperative. He says there's a certain case in Sanskrit. So it's not optional. And how should you approach samatpani? Means in a humble state of mind. It's symbolic, with firewood in your hand. In other words, with a service attitude, humbly, fully surrendered, as Arjuna does when he surrenders at the beginning of the Gita, and Sanatana Goswami. So this is a very important element. Is this humble, clean slate? I don't know. Why am I suffering? Who am I? This is the perfect question. So, the Brahmin Ajamila was going out and doing that menial service. So he was plugged in, but he wasn't completely in a pure Vaishnava line. So anyway, he encountered this. Famously, the Sudra couple embracing, and it was something that you can see, with 2 hits on your cell phone, you can get that now. So it's a much more dangerous age, obviously. And he couldn't control himself. He tried through his knowledge. He knew from his training that this was very hazardous, but the karma overwhelmed him, and this comes up again and again, and we experience it in our own lives, and that is at the end of the 3rd chapter. What's the effect of this powerful desire? And one thing I wanted to emphasize again, because I mentioned it in one of the classes in the question and answer session, is that the word karma means in strong desire for something. Yes, it often means sex desire, because that's the most prominent one, the most powerful one, but not the only one. One can have a strong desire for drugs. That's also kama. One can have a strong desire for fame, name and fame, pratishtasha. This is one of the Hare Krishna. Shanti. This is one of the impediments to devotional service, the unclean things we need to clean from the temple of the heart, just as Lord Chaitanya cleaned the Gundicha temple. It's mentioned among the things that the dust and dirt can come back into the heart, even after we clean, if you're not careful. If you're not on just like the steps from Shraddha to Prema that Rupa Goswami gives in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So illustrative, so important for us to know those. It begins with Shraddha. Now this isn't pure Shraddha. This is Prabhupada says, because that's later on. This is respect, interest, receptivity, enough to bring you into the association of devotees, or in the modern age, enough to open that book that you got at the airport or in the park, that's enough Shraddha to begin with. Because as soon as you open that book, you're in the association of the greatest devotee, Srila Prabhupada. We should remember that. You're giving out Prabhupada's association, the most valuable thing, So, what happens with that Shraddha? That opens up your heart to receptivity to the message. That's the most important part. So Adarshadat tadak saru sangha. And in the association of devotees, then you'll hear Satam prasangan mama virya samvido. This is what Kapila says. Kapila Dev, he's teaching his mother. Satam prasangan. Prasangan means, in this case, and prasangan appears several times in the series of verses, begins with prasangan ajaram pasho, the powerful attachment, or like ropes binding us to this world. So that attachment has to be transferred to the sadhu, the pure devotee. We have to be attached, we have to be attracted. So you can't kill it. And the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, they try to kill it, but it can't be. We become attached. You become attached to your impersonal liberation. You're going to be attached. But then a few verses later, that same word is used for meaningful association. Satam prasangam. With whom? With the satam, with the devotees. So what's the first thing happening? You're going to hear about me. Kapila Dev says, you're going to hear about Krishna. Mama virya samvido, my powerful glories. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido. Bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. So this is the medicine to cure your disease of birth and death, but it's a very sweet medicine. It's not hard to take. Satam mama virya sam bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. That kata, that glorification of me, Kapila Deva is saying, is the nectar for the ears and for the mind, for the heart. And in that, and it's a process. This is our most important process. We're doing it right now. I'm trying to be just a channel for the teachings of Bhagavatam, Prabhupada. Tadjoshanat, employing this method, ashu, quickly, apavarga vartmani, the path of liberation. Apavarga, means becoming free of all the horrible things that bind you and make you suffer in this world. Pa vargas, pa and ma. Prabhupada said you're mostly familiar with this, right? So parishrama, hard labor in this material world. So hard working nowadays. People, they even work 2-3 jobs. They can't make enough to. So they're selling blood. It's crazy, Of course, selling. So parishrama, so much you foam at the mouth, right? Painila, that's a PH word. And the next one, banda, the B can be two things. Banda, you become bound up, or bhyartata means frustration. Frustration. It's all around us. It's material life. And bhaya, fear, anxiety. It's a kind of fear, and as you can't make ends meet, what am I going to do? So many things. Nowadays, everybody's got a gun, add to the fear. And finally, M, mrityu. So these are the vargas. Why varga? Varga in this case means a series of letters in the Sanskrit alphabet. There's 5 or 6 of them. I'm going to go through them. So there's one that begins with P, pa, ba, and ma. So each one of those stands for a horrible thing in the material world. Last picture is death. So apavarga becomes free of all these things. You become liberated, you see. So this is apavarga vartmani. But that's not really your final goal, so the last line is there. You're giving free. Apavarga vartmani is the path of liberation. And what do you get? Shraddha, rati, bhakti, anukramishti. Step by step, by following this path of devotional service, centering on hearing and chanting, you deepen your faith. Now this is the real faith. This isn't just your respect and interest, which is essential at the beginning. This is Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Korhe Sudridha Nishtoy Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. This is the Lord Chaitanya teaching Sanatana Goswami. Shraddha Shabde, this word Shabde I discovered when I was working on the CC, is a word that means is defined as, the sound it means this. So what is it? Vishwas Kahi, a very strong conviction, Nishchoy, which is unshakable, that just by acting in Krishna consciousness, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. You see, this is what we should aim for, that depth of faith, So, Ajamila did not have that. He didn't have that one-pointed faith in Krishna. He would have cried out to Krishna, Krishna, save me, First he would have closed his eyes or turned away, and then cried out, chanted a nectar verse, get his mind away. In other words, the holy name and everything that flows from it is a defense against the temptations of Maya. And you're not killing your attachment, because they describe very carefully, these Yamadutas, very good, important instruction, that the desires that you develop from the modes of nature in association with material nature, that carries you on to your next life. And if those desires are not controlled because of knowledge that you have, no, I can't do that, let me do this. It's just like today, what feels good, do it. It was one of the themes of the 60s. Hare Krishna. And so you're going to get entangled, and you'll suffer like anything in this life and the next life. So that how to purify one's desires, that's really the whole business. Because we're going to desire. That's what we are. Living entities desire. We desire things, we do things, we try to enjoy. How can we get to that platform of pleasure and enjoyment that is wholesome? That is rather negating our sinful desires. In other words, how can karma be turned back into prema? Prabhupada says it in the purport in that. He says, karma is nothing but prema, which is the intense desire to serve Krishna, which brings so much bliss. That we forget about Krishna, and we become absorbed in the dualities of this material world. And the first thing that happens as soon as you turn away from Krishna, fear. Bhayam. You're no longer under the protection of the Lord. So that shelter of the Lord, He protects us by attracting us to Him. So that these other desires, which is keeping us bound in this world and inducing us to perform sins, which produce so much suffering, are negated. They're burned to ash. Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna parada vinde nabanamana sadhamam yuddatam brantumasit tadavade batanadi sangame smayamane bhavati mukibakaru sushtinishtivanancha. Prabhupada famously, memorably says, I spite on it. Very touching. So what is the Yamunacharya is saying? Ever since I have been tasting ever new pleasure by serving the lotus feet of Krishna, since then, whenever the thought and remembrance, because sometimes these things bubble up in the mind, you know that. When it comes across my sex life with my harem that I had as society girls, excuse me. When that comes up, I just spit at the thought of it. It's not like, oh, let me think of that, let me get... No. And it's not tempting him, so he can't control it. He immediately spits at the thought, and he just chants Hare Krishna, remembers Radhamadava, And it's not even there. It's not like you're fighting with the desire. The desire, Maya releases you. That famous verse in Gita, Daiviyesha gunamayi, mama maya duracaya, mameveye prapadyate, maya me tang tarandite. That this divine energy of mine, known as Maya, composed of the three modes of material nature, is impossible to cross over by oneself without, my help. But those who surrender unto me can easily cross beyond it. So the first step in the surrender is that, yes, I have to accept these austerities, I don't want to get up at 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, spontaneously. Does anyone ever join and spontaneously rise at 3:30? But I know that I should. And I've surrendered in the sense that, I've joined the ashram. This is how the movement was set up, back in the and therefore and all these other guys are getting up, I remember Rabindranath Sarup, he would clear the room, he would turn the light on and say, okay, all of the sleeping bags, roll them up, and there's no question of sleeping in. So we need those austerities at first. After some time, you can go traveling in the van with a couple other book distributors, and you're getting up and you're chanting and you're taking shelter, and they come back. Almost always. I remember one fellow in New York, I'm not going to name any names, he went out in the van, he was one of our main book distributors, he was doing huge, But the poor, I had no idea, I don't know if anyone else did, he had been a heroin addict. And that's very difficult to overcome, And he got into it and he never came back. Maybe we got the van back, I'm not sure, I think. But it's dangerous. That's why we have so many instructions, the nectar of instruction, the nectar of devotion, to keep us on the straight and narrow path. That devotees also, until you get to the point of bhava and prema, practically. I mean, even have the example of Bharat Maharaj, who was on Baba. He didn't have association, though. So this, so what's happening here is that the Yamadutas are finishing their argument, which is perfectly valid for anyone who's not chanting the holy name and is not a devotee. They've been doing this for how many years? They got instructions from Yamarāja, but why did he neglect to tell them about the chanting of the holy name? But he doesn't neglect when they get back. They said, whatever you do not approach anyone who's chanting the holy name, right? He has one sloka, let's see if I can remember it, which it begins with the word etavan, and it's kind of wraps up his instructions to his dutas. It's some very important instructions in the next chapter. So he says etavan etavan evalokesmin pungsang, thank you, etavan evalokesmin pungsang dharma parasmitaha Bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama guhanaribi. He says that etavan evalokesmin pungsang dharma paraksmina. It is understood that the highest dharma for human beings living in this world is bhakti yoga to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, beginning with the chanting of the holy name. Bhagavati tannama guhanaribi. Beginning adibi with his name. So this is a very important verse for us for the whole. And the Bhagavatam is full of these kinds of instructions. I like to point out the very, 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 very last verse of the Bhagavatam begins with the words Nama Sankirtana. Yeah. So this chapter, this whole pastime is so important for us. And Prabhupada, one of the most memorable things, I think we've read this already, maybe it's in the next chapter, that the members of the Krishna conscious movement should always remember where they came from. In other words, how they've been saved by the process of devotional service, the chanting the holy name and everything else, but especially emphasizing the chanting. And that we don't want to fall away and get, and take up in bad habits, It's not that we're going to, you may not go to hell, but isn't taking birth and dying again, isn't that enough punishment? Well, we should try. In other words, we should try to go back to Godhead. We should try to go back to Godhead as strongly as we can. Maya has many tricks. One is that, Krishna says I'll take birth in a devotee family. Why should I go all through all of this austerities and everything? Let me take it easy. That's suicidal. It's not suicidal, but you can't commit suicide. But it's not what Prabhupada recommended. We should try as hard as possible. He encouraged us to be pure. So that's what I'm getting here. That and we're going to hear the Viṣṇudūtas, of course, giving their explanation of the power of the holy name, very important, and also Yamarāja himself. He's going to give very important instructions about chanting the holy name and remembering. And it all comes back to that. It comes back to that, how the chanting of the holy name is our best shot at attaining constant remembrance of the Lord. And I think we've quoted some. I remember quoting a verse from the 12th canto, how important that is. How many times Prabhupada says, yes, chant. We just read that in the Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter, 5, 6, and 7, beginning with Antakale Chamameva Smaran Mukta Kalevaram. And Prabhupada is emphasizing which means those who remember me at the time of death will certainly come to me. Smaran Mukta Kalevaram Yak Priyati Samad Bhavam Yasti Nachata Sanksha. They will certainly come to me. Whatever you remember, that will determine your next life. Yang Vapi Smaran Bhavam Chajajante Kalevaram. So all the things that course through our mind in the day, that may distract us from Krishna, or Prajalpa. Why is it so important to stop Prajalpa? Because that's mundane sound vibration. It takes your mind away from Krishna. It's really awe-inspiring to think what it would be like to remember Krishna at every moment of every day, to never to be so surrendered, and to be conscious of the fact. There's another verse. This is from the 11th canto. What is it? I forget how the Sanskrit goes, but it says, whatever you do with your senses, your mind, your intelligence, your being, you should always think, this is an offering to Narayan. Yeah? Narayanayeti samarpayeta, that's the last line. So that was Prabhupada's demeanor. That you could see that. He's picking up the phone. He's not just picking up the phone, he's picking up the phone as a service. Because whatever he's going to say on that phone is going to be, serving Krishna. So everything, he had that kind of grace. It was obviously 100% Krishna conscious. So that's what we should aspire for. I mean, that's what the whole temple is. There's always something to do. Welcome, Hare Krishna. Please, you can have a seat. We have so many seats. You can sit on a bench if you like, or if you want to. I'm sorry? Yeah, sit on that bench. You can just look at the deities. So, where was I? So the whole Krishna consciousness movement had been set up to give us progressive, deeper and deeper remembrance of Krishna. Prabhupada was talking about, the first days. It was in some interview with somebody, how he's set up the little temple, 22nd Avenue. So there's always something to do for Krishna. So you can fill your day with services for Krishna. When he could, he started back to Godhead. That was the whole thing. He had people writing, and then collating the things and then distributing. All of these things are for Krishna, and they help us remember Krishna. And Krishna responds. He cleanses the hearts. Srinvatam sakata Krishna punya shabana kirtana riddindaksto yabhadrani vidunoti suritsatam. Such an important verse that at the end of those verses about Dharma in the second chapter. So when we get a taste, and cultivating that taste for Krishna, right? How to get the taste? Shusho shodadhanasya is the faith again. Vasudeva kataruchi syan mahatsevaya vipra punyatirtana shevanat. So getting that taste for hearing is all important. So he says, Shushu Shosha Dadhanasa, this eagerness to hear with faith, Vasudeva Kataruchi, to get the taste for hearing Vasudeva Kata, Krishna Kata. Syan Mahatsevaya. Syan is an important word. It means comes into being, is caused by. Mahatsevaya, service to the Mahatmas, the Guru. Punya Shabana, Syan Mahatsevaya Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirthana Shevanat, who are themselves places of pilgrimage. What is the place of pilgrimage? A place where you can go to get purified, to hear about God, to serve. So Srila Prabhupada was a moving place of pilgrimage. If you just approach, that's why any association with the great devotee like that is invaluable for your life, even a moment's association. So that's service, surrendered service. And what's the first and most important service? I heard this is in a purport. Hearing from the Guru. That's why Prabhupada was adamant that we not only distribute the books, but that we read the books. And he started the Bhakti Shastri, so that we read systematically. This was how he knew that he would be able to continue to purify the descendants, disciples and disciples, by making the books and the classes and everything, the sound vibration. So that begins, of course, with the hearing and chanting of the holy name. That's the essence of hearing and chanting. And from that flows the faith and the interest in, I want to hear about this Krishna. What is this? Who is this Krishna? This name, I'm feeling, some little dollops of bliss here. What is this all about? And you open the Bhagavad Gita, there's a whole science to it, and who we are, and what, and why we're suffering in this world. So this whole pastime of Ajamila is so important for emphasizing the importance of chanting the holy name and cultivating remembrance of Krishna, because we don't know when that last breath is going to be, when that antakala is. Part of Maya's trick is convincing us that, or convincing us that it's not so. I know theoretically, that I'm going to die, but I'm not going to die now. Somebody else died, he died. So you're not preparing yourself, but actually it can happen at any time. At any time, There's crazy war going on. We got Omicron is still mutating,
And everyone's got guns. There's more guns in America than people. And many people don't have any guns. That means many people have an arsenal of guns. What for? You know? Anyway. So it's a danger. Life is dangerous. Need we chant it? We can all chant together. Samashitaye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punyasho marare pabambade vatsa padam 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 yad padam natesham. So I should have put it into a poem by now, but I didn't. So samashitaye padapallavaplavam. Those who take shelter of the boat of the lotus feet of Murari. Mahatpadam, where all the Mahatmas dwell, or where the whole Mahatattva dwells, in other words, the foundation of the whole universe. Punyasha Murari, here we're back to Punyasha, hearing his glories automatically brings piety. Again, back to the Punyasha Murari, Bhavambudya Vatsapadam Baram. This whole ocean, it's like a hazardous ocean. Ocean is hazardous by nature. Dangerous ocean of birth and death. Shrinks down to the water in a calf's hoofprint. Doesn't even say cow's hoofprint. Calf's hoofprint. Easily crossed over, right? Vatsapadam is the calf's hoofprint. Parampadam, because they've already gone. Even if they may be in the material world, someone who's fully taken shelter is already there in the spiritual world. And the consciousness is there. That's parampadam. Not for them is this place, where there's padam padam yadvipadam, danger at every step. And then this wonderful verse, and I'll end here, and that is, again, back to the holy name. The Kevalashtika, 8 verses about the holy name by Nilakanta Goswami. Hariname Vikevalam. My favorite one is number 4. Nikshvase nahi vishvaso kadarudho bhavishyati kirtaneya mata balyad hariname Vikevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions or comments? Yes, Bhakta Saul. Give him a mic. You have to do it with your left hand. Your right hand is kind of ghee. I'll read the trend. Well, I read a lot of verses. Let's see, maybe the last one. He started with 65, but I think it all culminates in 68. They wind up their argument. This man Ajamila did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamarāja for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. That's the summary of the whole thing. Their argument. And it's airtight, except for the holy name. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. I just had a question. You mentioned this topic about service attitude and a couple times in your class, like in the middle and the end.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, how do we not become attached to our services, but attached to serving the Lord and Krishna? And then another one was, how can we serve such sadhus in a practical way, just serving.
Well, becoming attached to your service is not such a bad thing, especially in the early stages. So I wouldn't worry about that. But the best way, to become attached to the Lord, attached to His Guru and the whole, and that is that's why we have the Upadeshamrita, is that one has to surrender. And of course, first we surrender to Prabhupada. We surrender to Srila Prabhupada through his books, through his mantra, and through his representatives. And then to establish, become determined to follow the routine program and refine it. Just like, I don't like to harp because I'm not in any management position here. But coming on time, I remember that was so much emphasized when we first joined, If you didn't come on time, you got a black star or something. You would know. And everyone, was dashing down to the temple for the evening arti, as well as what to speak of the morning program. That was because any job, you come late, you get fired. In other words, it's a sign of your seriousness and your devotion. Krishna, he's agreed to allow himself to be dressed so beautifully, and he's smiling. He wants to see us too, So when the curtains open, we should try to be there, and sing along. Govinda Mani Purusam. Prabhupada loved that song, and that. Huh? Yes, exactly. We should be there. I remember when I first came to the temple, we used to sing, right? Jaya Gaura-Nitai, Jaya Gaura-Nitai, anticipating the opening of the curtain. She's Gaura-Nitai. And so these things, this regularity, and getting enough sleep, not eating at night, so that your mind is very clear for the morning program. So much of just paying attention. And cultivating. What can you cultivate? You can cultivate understanding the meaning of all the words in the samsara prayers. Start out with that. That's the first thing we chant. I know, because I did it for years, the Sanskrit's kind of flowing by. I know pretty much, generally what it means. But I'm telling you, it's a whole different experience. Samsara, davana, you're feeling that heat from the burning of the samsara. Lida, all suffering, all the people are suffering. Loka, tranaya. Srila Prabhupada, the mercy cloud, is saving us from the burning fire of samsara by showering down his mercy in the form of ISKCON, the holy name, prasadam, books, association, everything, and himself. So understanding the meaning, just like, that's why I took the trouble to put these things in English, some of the prayers. So there'll be some poetry, but the meaning will come there in your own language, So that's way of cultivation and attention during the chanting. This will give you more and more spiritual strength to avoid those things that are still impediments, and to become more and more enthused. And what's the payoff? Everything about Krishna becomes sweeter. The holy name, the deities, the prasadam, which is already sweet, but just as prasadam, In other words, you're conscious of everything you're doing at once. And that's where, just like Saul is a walking miracle in many ways. But the one thing I really want to congratulate you on, he was tone deaf when he came. He would sing, and it would be hard for me to lead kirtan if it was too clear, too near. Got to keep the tune. But by practice, he can sing in tune now. I've never heard that before. I mean, it's almost like a genetic thing, And when I was in Miami, there was a lot of people said, "Oh boy, you have to sing loud, But now that's a wonderful thing, and it shows because you wanted it, and Krishna gave you that, And you may not know this, but Saul knows ballet. He's a dancer. I'm waiting for him to show some of his. So Krishna does that. He gives you expertise. If you really want to serve him in a certain way, then he'll help you to serve him in that way. And prayer. Let's not forget prayer is so important. Please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind, as Ganges torrent flows into the sea. Let all my love flow constantly to thee. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.